Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Gail Martin, and today in this session, I want to take you to the site of the book that we wrote in our Joe Mack Adventures, Reading, Pennsylvania. Now, of course, this is Reading, Pennsylvania in the 1920s in Joe Mack's Black Sun book, but I want to take you to as many of the sites as still exist because it's really fun, I think, to see the locations where a book was set and also locations that may have inspired things that don't exist but should have in the book. So Reading's a little special for me. I grew up going to Reading because my grandparents lived there. Most of my extended family on my dad's side was in that area. There's a cemetery outside of town where hundreds of my relatives over the many years have been buried. So a lot of these places that I'm going to take you are places I visited many times as I was growing up. Now they've shifted and changed, and certainly they are very different from the way they were in Joe Mack's day. But I can't wait to share this with you because there's some pretty cool sites. Now, Reading, Pennsylvania, in case you aren't familiar with Pennsylvania as a whole, it's on the eastern side, a little bit outside of Philadelphia, over an hour. But it used to be a textile town. It was known for a couple of things, textiles and Luden's cough drops. So we're going to see a couple of cool things here that were used in Joe Mack's Black Sun. Of course, Joe Mack started out as a steel worker in Pittsburgh, and he died in the Homestead riots. And then he was saved by Crocus, the Slavic god of blacksmiths, when he called out for vengeance, and he became soulbound and oathbound to Crocus, who has made him his champion to help others who are being hurt and oppressed by corrupt, powerful influences. In the Joe Mack adventure, Joe teams up with Jack West, who is a supernatural Secret Service agent, and heiress Grace Harringworth, who just likes adventure and has plenty of money and can open doors and bend rules and pick locks like a pro. So we're going to start with the Pagoda. Now, why does Reading, which is in Pennsylvania, have a pagoda? Well, back in the late 1800s, in 1908, someone thought it would be really cool to create a unique tourist attraction in Reading, this little textile town in Pennsylvania. So they built an elaborate pagoda. It is a really cool place. And you can see, I'm going to back us out of this just a bit so you can see that there are two, I can't really call them mountains, but they are Mount Penn and Neversink Mountain. And the pagoda over here is on Mount Penn. So we are going to come take a look at this because the pagoda plays a big role in Black Sun. It's a really cool place. It has a gift shop. It has an observation tower. It was originally going to be part of a big hotel complex that never got built. And as I share some of this with you, you're going to see some of the things that were dreamed of or that are past in Reading's history that were pretty cool, but aren't there anymore. So in the Joe Mack adventure, there is a meeting, a clandestine meeting that takes place at the pagoda, and there is a bell, which we see here, which was brought over from China. And in Black Sun, that bell has a very important supernatural inscription on it that they have to find and make sure they understand what it means. So here we have the bell that is used in Black Sun. You can see it's in the observation tower. One of the coolest things with the pagoda is that it is edged with neon. And so at night, you can see it from pretty much anywhere in Reading, and it is this bright red pagoda on the hill. Can't miss it. There we are in the observation tower with that bell from China that plays an important role in Black Sun. And you can see this is a wooded area. There's a fire tower up in the general area, as well as, I don't know whose dog that is. This is Google Earth. So I don't control the pictures. It's whatever people have added, but it's probably one of the best way. There's some kids having a good time. So that's the Pagoda. Durger Drive is the road that leads up to the Pagoda. Now, Durger was an early innovator when automobiles first came to be. So he was based in Reading. Of course, when automobiles first came out, there were a lot of different companies, many that did not survive, so you've never heard of them. Of course, you know, Chrysler and Chevrolet, and some of those were very early ones, but there were many other ones that have just gone away, and Durger is one of those. But he built a drive because people who bought these newfangled automobiles like to have places to go with them. So there's Durger Drive that took you up the mountain to the Pagoda. Why? Because it's there. Now, the Neversink Loop is over here on Reading's competing mountain, and it's a nature trail now. But Neversink, and I'll put a link to this in the comments, is a very interesting place in that once upon a time, at the very beginning of the 20th century, Neversink Mountain had 5 or 6 huge luxury hotels, and it had 2 inclines and a railroad line that ran around to take people from one hotel to another. And over the years, those hotels burned or were eventually torn down. Most of them burned. Of course, they're wooden structures, that happens. I kind of, after having reading some of the history and some of the financial troubles these places had, I'm not sure that that wasn't assisted a little, but you know, history doesn't prove that. So what you're going to see on this Neversink Loop, which is now a nature trail, are the foundations in some places of those long ago hotels and the and evidence of those long ago railroad lines. And one of them was a funicular line. And if you're familiar with Pittsburgh and some of the other cities, a funicular is a slanted short railroad line that exists to take a car with passengers from the bottom of a hill to the top of a hill. And of course, since you had hotels and bandstands and ballrooms at the top of Neversink Mountain, you wanted to be able to take people there at a time when most people didn't have cars, hence the railways. So you can see that now this is a very pretty nature trail. You get some looks down onto the river. This is called the Witch's Hat. We'll see more of it. So let me back up one here. Pardon me. Some of the things that still exist from the old hotels. There's some of these ponds were actually features from some of the hotels back when they were maintained. And sorry, I'm a little croaky this morning. And you can see the entrance to an old wine cellar. The Witch's Hat was a pavilion at one of the hotels. Because it was stone, it didn't burn. As you can see, it's had some vandalism. But, you know, for its age, it's held up pretty well. Now you have some pretty views. I'm going to reach myself a soda here and pick back up in just a second. Should have thought to start that first. All right, so we're seeing some very pretty views of the city. As I said, Reading was originally a textile city. You had Vanity Fair based there. You had Luden's Cough Drops based there. And over the years, Reading's hit some hard times. There you see some of the cemetery at the base of Neversink Mountain. Here you get a little more of an idea of some of the ruins that are left. But now it's basically a nature trail. And I love Google Earth because it can show us all these things, but again, I don't control the individual pictures. Pardon me. I want to bust open a soda here. All right, so that's Neversink Mountain, where the hotel in Black Sun, Joe Mack takes that funicular line up to one of the hotels, which even in his time in 1929 is abandoned, but there is a secret organization that is holding an illegal meeting there. And so they take advantage of a hotel that is abandoned, but still standing. Now we're going to get a little better look at the Witch's Hat. It's a cool structure. And of course, the name comes from the shape. A nice sunset there over the city. And here you can see the pagoda across the way over on Mount Penn. I had cousins who used to go hiking at all these places when I was a kid. Here you can look up and see the interior structure of the Witch's Hat roof. And some graffiti and a dog. There you have a little distant view from the Witch's Hat. And again, I don't control the pictures. So now in Black Sun, Joe goes undercover as a worker, and he gets a job at an illegal speakeasy, and he's really looking for evidence about some illegal organizations who are based in history. The Order of the Black Sun was a proto-Nazi organization in the 1930s in Germany, and Reading had, as was the Fellowship of the Golden Dawn, which also comes up in the book. Those were very German nationalistic organizations, which led into all of the turmoil in Germany and fomented a lot of the turmoil in Germany in the 1930s that led to the rise of the Nazi Party. And Reading is a town that was at the time predominantly German immigrants. And so you had some people who sympathized with these German nationalistic groups and felt like they had come over here, bought into some promises. They were disappointed in how things turned out. So you had some bitterness and some resentment, and that made them very easy to manipulate by people who, in this case, since this is a paranormal series, weren't just looking to bring people to power. They were also looking to manipulate some dark entities down in the coal mines beneath Reading. Before we go to the next site, I want to give you that overview here. Here you see the Schuylkill River, and of course that is a real indicator on whether or not you're from this area, on how you pronounce Schuylkill. It is not Schuylkill, it is Schuylkill. So here you can look down on the city from the heights here. And I'm going to take us down here because this area is where that mine collapse happens. Pennsylvania is heavily undermined with coal mines going all the way back to the early 1700s. And there are so many mines that nobody knows where they all are. They are so old. There have been so many companies that had their headquarters burned down, their paper records burned, that got bought and merged and went out of business, and the assets were just lost. So we know that there are thousands of miles of coal mines beneath Pennsylvania. We just don't know where they all are. And in Pennsylvania, especially in coal mining areas, which is a lot of the state, it is advisable to buy mine subsidence insurance if you own a home. That way, if a sinkhole opens under your home and it suddenly swallows your house, you have protection, and that happens. So the idea that there are coal mines from the 1700s that were long abandoned, but nobody goes back and fills these things in, that is a very, very possible thing. Now, fortunately, that hasn't happened in real life, but you can see this area, definitely beneath this area, we don't know where all the coal mines are. Now, when Joe comes, and of course, he's in the persona of a working man looking for a job, and he'll take anything, which is why, big sturdy guy, used to be a steel worker. They hire him to move barrels and casks and kegs at the illegal speakeasy. So he gets a rooming house, gets a room at a rooming house, and that's how he gets a lead on some of these illegal organizations. But there is also a German healer, folk healer. And this was one of the most cool things. I had grown up my whole life going to Reading, and I didn't realize how big a role Reading played in German folk magic until I did the research for the Joe Mack book that we wrote. And there were two German magic grimoires that were written and published originally in the 1700s in Reading. And so one of the people who plays a big role in Black Sun is one of these German folk magicians. And we get to learn more about that folk magic. And so the folk healer lives here at 949 North 9th Street. Now, this has some resonance for me because that's actually the row house where my grandparents lived and where my dad was born a long, long time ago. Of course, my family has been gone for decades. The house remains. My grandparents had bought it shortly after, they bought it when it was new, shortly after he came home from World War I. So we are going to take a little look at this block, and if Google Earth will help me out here, we're going to take a look at 949. Now, what you have here are row houses, and these row houses were originally built for the textile workers. Sorry, hang on to your stomach. Sometimes moving this around is a little crazy. Okay, this red one here is 949. And what you've got is a 3-story row house with a basement. You can see these narrow pass-throughs that are cut every couple of houses. They have adjacent walls. And it's basically the northeastern multi-story version of what we call in the South a shotgun house. There's straight line straight through. There's an alley behind with in my grandparents' case, there was a garage and which was more of a shed that you could put a car in. And there was even still let's see if I can get us a little closer to being in front here. Maybe not. And let's see if I can turn. Well, darn it. I think I moved a little too far. There we are. So this one is 949. There, straight through the house, so you had a front parlor, which could also be used as an office. And then you had a more private parlor, and then a dining room, and then a kitchen. And upstairs were bedrooms, and there was an attic area that could be finished as a bedroom. There was a semi-finished basement. And because Joe Mack's story is written in 1929, this house was built in about 1919, 1920, there were originally outhouses behind the row houses because indoor plumbing wasn't a thing yet. At least not for working men. And these were basically built for the textile mill workers, the workers at the Vanity Fair, the workers at the Luden's Cough Drop Company. So by the time I was visiting my aunt and uncle who lived there, of course, indoor plumbing had been retrofitted, and the outhouse had been sealed up and cleaned up, and it was now just a storage shed, but it was directly behind the house. And if you've read Black Sun, you know that something important happens in that outhouse. So this is 949, where the German folk healer lives. And of course, the rooming house, which is based on history, was at the end of that block. And now I'm going to take you, well, I'm going to scope us back out here. Well, maybe not that far. Let's go back. Come on. Look, there's Earth. So here we are at 949. And here is he does mention the Luden's Cough Drop Company. It is Luden's goes on, but the huge factory does not. So here's the folk healers row house. Here's the area where the rooming house would have been. Here's the area where the brewery would have been. And, or actually, I'll be showing you the brewery in just a minute. It's a little further along on 9th Street. But this is the Luden's, what's left of the Luden's cough drop factory. And you can see it's seen better days. It looks like it's had a fire. It was a really, truly huge place, and it was still functioning when I was a kid. And you could smell that cherry cough drop smell when you'd go downtown and they were still making things. So it was pretty cool. Now, the actual Reading Brewery, a little further down the street, in the book, there's a speakeasy at the end, a couple blocks away. But there is a Reading Brewery, and it did exist all the way back in the day. And Reading was actually a hotspot for defying prohibition. Not surprisingly, you got a bunch of stubborn Germans, which I can say because I am a stubborn German. Nobody was going to make them give up their beer. And so Reading was known for defying prohibition rules and absolutely flouting it. They weren't even that sneaky about their speakeasies. Some of these sites don't exist in nearly the same way. This site, and we're not going to be able to read the plaque, but if I can get us down, go back to location, and let's do street views. Now, why am I taking you to an intersection? Well, Joe, of course, has a soft spot for workers that were massacred in union uprisings, and there were a lot in his day. So, of course, he died in the Homestead riots, and there we go. Reading had its own Homestead riots, and Reading had its own massacre, the Reading Railroad Massacre, and this happened in, I believe, 1877. I give the details in the book. There was an underpass here for the railroad, and the workers were striking, and the company brought in paid guns, Pinkertons, just like the people who killed Joe Mack, fired down on them from above, and there were a lot of deaths. And then, of course, the company decided it was bad PR, so they, over the years, did as much as they could to hide the spot and keep it from becoming a shrine. And all those dead people got was this little commemorative plaque. But you can read more about the Reading Railroad Massacre, and it was a real place. Now, there's also some stuff that happens in the book in the city park. Now, back in Joe Mack's day, this was a much bigger deal. There was, of course, one of the things that was very big around that time in the 1920s were railroad companies that wanted people to take the line a couple of extra stops or maybe all the way to the end of the line so that they would pay a higher fare. So they would put a park at the end of the line. Now, sometimes those were amusement parks, and that's where a lot of our theme parks got their start. But sometimes they were also just natural parks where people could picnic or go for a nice walk or hear a band. And so having a band shell and a picnic area and a lake to walk around and maybe a few rides like a Ferris wheel or a merry-go-round were, a big deal back then, and something that people, even on a working man's salary, could afford once in a while to take their sweetheart out on a date or maybe take the family out for an outing, even on a working man's salary. There's not much left of the park that Joe attends, that Joe meets somebody at in the book. The band shell, through its many iterations, is still there, and you can see that that's still very Art Deco band shell. But it was a much bigger park. It had other statues and fountains, which are now gone. And so the description in the book is based on the historical descriptions that I can find, that I found of the location. You can see a Veterans Memorial there. This is all that remains, but I think it's kind of neat to see places that show up in these books, even if time has changed them. Now, Stokesay Castle is what, I guess in a lot of things you might call it a folly. It was built by a very wealthy man who wanted his own castle, and he was an industrialist. And over the years, it has become an entertainment venue, but it's still a pretty cool place. And they did their best to make it look like a castle. And this gets used as a location for a dinner meeting that goes terribly wrong in the book. But it is a real place. It does real events. It's a kind of cool thing to go to if you happen to be in Reading. And well, you can see here, these are some pictures from parties and weddings. They also do, I believe they also have a regular dining room. So that's a pretty cool place. Now, Grace Sarah Harringworth is an heiress. Her father was a steel baron. Her late husband came from a coal family, and she leverages those connections to get her and Jack West, the supernatural Secret Service agent, into some of the secret meetings of the upper echelon here in Reading. Now, the hotel that Grace stayed at is no longer a hotel, but it does exist because it was a very nicely built location. So, Washington and 5th, there we go. It used to be the Berkshire Hotel. And here we can see what remains of it. You can see that it has good bones in terms of the structure. And if we go this way a little bit, we should be able to see a little more, but maybe not. Sometimes Google Earth is finicky. You can see that it was, well, there we zoom out. Let's go back to Street View here. Come on. There goes that swoopy thing again. And there we are at the Berkshire Hotel. So we're gonna try that street view one more time. Stop here where we get a better look at the building. And here you can very easily now imagine this building as a luxury hotel because Grace wouldn't have it any other way. You can see it's still strongly built. Look at those windows. You can imagine a big dining room there. Of course, they also hit some high-end speakeasies while they're there because Grace isn't taking this whole prohibition thing seriously. But there we have what's left of the Berkshire Hotel. And we have one more place that also plays a role in Black Sun, and that is the Loudon Mansion, which was built by, yes, that guy with the cough drop company, and then became a Catholic school. Now, in the book, and if I can stop the world from rotating here, we're going to go have a look at this. In the book, it is still it's a Catholic school, and they come up in the basement. I don't mention it having been the mansion. You can see it's seen better days. A lot of Reading has seen better days, unfortunately. Big, solid place. And they come up from the mines in the basement of this Catholic school through some secret tunnels after they have dealt with the big bad. So this is my view of Reading, Pennsylvania from the Joe Mack Adventures second book, Black Sun. I hope you've enjoyed getting to see some of the locations and being able to have those pictures in your mind as you read the book. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you online.